This one is about Bernie Sanders and his position on abortion rights. And this is an article, short article from Newsweek. It says 1972 article surfaces showing Bernie Sanders backed abortion rights year before Roe v. Wade. Wow, that's crazy. So apparently Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973. He actually came out in an article talking about how he supports it in 1972. So it says here, is there a subheadline? No subheadline. So it says Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders backed abortion rights and ridiculed male-dominated legislatures governing women's bodies in a 1972 article surfaced Wednesday. The commentary reveals another stark decades-long contrast between he and former Vice President Joe Biden's progressive stances. Sanders told Vermont's Bennington Banner newspaper in September 1972, months before the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on Roe v. Wade, that abortion procedures should only be a concern between a woman and her physician. It says the article sits aside several letters that then Liberty Union candidate for governor wrote to local newspapers calling for the abolition of all laws dealing with abortion, drugs, sexual behavior, end quote. It says the Bennington Banner confirmed to Newsweek Wednesday that Sanders was interviewed for the published 1972 article in which he feared women, quote, will be forced to go to those states where abortions are legal. And then I guess this is from the interview. It says, it strikes me. This is a quote from Bernie Sanders. It says, it strikes me as incredible that politicians think that they have the right to tell a woman what she can or cannot do with her body. Sanders told the Bennington Banner on September 1st, 1972. This is especially true in Vermont, where we have a legislature which is almost completely dominated by men. End quote. It says the opinions Sanders expressed to the Vermont newspaper were highly popular at the time. According to U.S. surveys, and Sanders' backing of abortion for nearly 50 years unveils a striking separation between himself and Biden, currently the 2020 Democratic frontrunner. Biden, who was a Democratic senator from Delaware from 1973 to 2009, stated Wednesday he still backs the 1976 Hyde Amendment. The measure prohibits the use of federal funding for abortion except in cases of rape, incest, and when the mother's life is in danger. Okay, so that's my mistake. I made a mistake in the last segment, talking about how a woman would want to have an abortion if she was raped. What is it? Rape, incest. So I mentioned rape. So apparently, according to this, it says that if a woman is raped and she wants to get an abortion, that is funded by the government. So you can't. There is federal funding for an abortion for a woman that got raped. So that's good at least. I actually forgot about that. That's something I remember hearing about back many years ago when that issue was being discussed. And it says, and in 1977, Biden voted against a measure to allow Medicaid to fund abortions for any victims of rape or incest. Despite his opposition, the exceptions passed, and years later, Biden voted against the same measure to protect a woman's life at risk. Let's see. Let's see here. It says, although many of the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates were too young to have expressed opinions about abortion before Roe v. Wade, Sanders' campaign senior advisor David Sirota told Newsweek Wednesday that time is less important than substance and consistency. It says, it's quoting Sirota here. It says, Bernie Sanders has been fighting these battles for decades, even when it wasn't politically advantageous, Sirota said. That tells you exactly where he will always be on these issues, even when the going gets tough. And that is important for voters to know, end quote. It says the 1972 article entitled "Abortion Up to Conscience, Not Government," says Sanders, relays the Brooklyn-born Vermont politician's progressive stances that liberals would be slow to embrace for decades, a divisive climb he appeared to acknowledge at the time. Quoting Bernie here, it says, quoting Bernie here, it says, "Abortion is an issue which brings out deep feelings in people, and I respect the feelings of those people who are opposed to abortion on moral grounds," he told the Bennington Banner. I feel, however, that these people should not be allowed to impose their sense of morality or religious feelings on people who hold a different opinion." Sanders penned a series of letters to the editor that year, including at least 2 supporting abortion rights to local Vermont newspapers. In an Instagram post last month, Sanders said extremist Republicans have been trying to overturn the Supreme Court's legalizing abortions since it passed in 1973. Quote, "Red Republican legislatures are trying to strip away women's rights state by state. This is a frightening time, but we will not let them win." He wrote May 17th as several states legalized the strictest abortion laws in the country's history. And that's probably referring to the Alabama law that was passed. Louisiana law was passed a little bit later. But mainly the Alabama law was definitely the one that got the most attention. So, I mean, listen, that's just a perfect example of Bernie Sanders showing that he does not care about appealing to specific, I guess a specific voter block, and that's it's not so much even a voter block. It's more of just kind of like a specific kind of mentality of like, oh, well, I have to be like flexible in this position because I want people to, vote for me. So I have to I have to sell out essentially. And Bernie doesn't do that. That's something that Bernie refuses to do, and that he should be applauded for that. And again, people go after Bernie Sanders for the stupidest reasons, and they worry about his purity tests. But there's a lot of times where you see women, that are pro-choice, obviously, and pushing for abortion rights and stuff, and they're very pure on that position, and they should be, as Bernie Sanders is. But when Bernie Sanders is pure on the position of abortion, nobody says shit. They don't say shit. They don't say who comes out. I don't think I've seen a single person that is a pro-choice abortion activist that has come out and say Bernie Sanders is awesome for standing up for this position when it was not popular and when it was something that a lot of people didn't, maybe they didn't believe in it. And Bernie is still doing that to this day. To use as an example, he came out in favor of he came out in favor of allowing criminals in prison, even convicted murderers, to vote. And that's something that's not popular. And people got pissed, and at first I didn't really support that. I was like, you know what? You have the right to vote. You're an American citizen. You have the right to vote. And the whole idea of not allowing people that are in prison not to vote is a form of voter suppression, and that's something obviously that a lot of people of color are going through. And who are the people that the government and police and authorities and stuff want to put in prison? They want to put people of color in prison. People of color are the ones that suffer the most through this situation. Not only are people of color dealing with voter suppression just in general, but then you throw them in jail. They throw them in jail, and that definitely keeps them from having the right to vote and having the opportunity to vote. So they just want to do everything to get that opportunity away from people. So, but when it comes to abortion, like I said in the last segment, not allowing the Hyde Amendment to exist. Not allowing the Hyde Amendment to, the Hyde Amendment basically being intact as it is right now, it affects women of color. And it affects those women and also low income, just general low income women from being able to get abortions and from being able to probably do a lot of things, I'm sure. But abortion is the main one when it comes to, kind of like reproductive rights and everything. So, and then when you have people like Joe Biden, as I said in the last segment too, you know, trying to take away, like, you know, contraception, kind of like the access to contraception, like that's another problem. Like, you know, Bernie Sanders is not against those things. Bernie Sanders wants, you know, everybody to, you know, live and let be, you know, live and let live, you know, let you live your life the way you want to have it. You know, if you want to have a life where you're having sex all the time and you're using birth control and you're, you know, let's say if you want to get an abortion because, I don't know, you want to get an abortion, that's your right, you know? But obviously you got to deal with all these right-wing assholes and extremists who are talking about how, you know, talking about babies' rights and shit. I mean, and these are the same people that are pushing for wars which are killing little kids. So all the different wars that we're in right now, they're all killing innocent little kids. That's what's happening in Yemen. When, you know, in Yemen, when there was a school bus, you know, full of like 40, you know, little kids, that bus got blown up by, you know, Saudi bombs that were being dropped on the heads of Yemeni people, and it happened to be 40 children too. 40 children in a school bus. They weren't jihadists, they weren't terrorists, nothing. And so don't talk to me about pro-life and, you know, wanting to save babies and stuff like that. Listen, at the end of the day, when a woman is pregnant and she has a fetus in her womb, that's part of her body. That's something that belongs to her, and she has the choice to do what she wants with it. Now, I'm not saying that she should go and purposely, like, literally kill the fetus or the baby or however you want to refer to it. You know, it would be one thing if the woman, like, stabbed herself and killed the baby or killed the fetus or whatever. That'd be a different story. But as far as the idea of abortion goes, abortion is not, no woman takes pleasure in getting an abortion. You know, just like no woman would get, well, unless you're crazy, no woman would get pleasure in stabbing her fetus, you know, the baby in her stomach, or however you want to refer to it as. You know, nobody gets pleasure out of getting an abortion. It's just not a fun thing. And the people that act like, so the people that are like anti-abortion activists are like, oh, well, you know, you're, you know, killing the baby and you don't care about life and stuff. No, that's not true at all. That's not, like, that's a ridiculous position. But, I mean, what do you expect from right-wingers? They're going to come up with a bunch of fucking stupid bullshit to say to rationalize their so-called pro-life position. So, but yeah, when you hear that kind of stuff, yeah, as we all know, we shouldn't take it seriously. Those people are maniacs. They don't even, like, they don't have any kind of moral compass, and they pretend like they're the most moral person in the room. And that's just, I mean, it's embarrassing, and it's just typical of people that think they know it all, and they want to tell you what to do. They want to tell you how to run your life. And I mean, what are you going to do? It's something we got to deal with in this political landscape, you know? But it's great to see that people like Bernie Sanders are committed to pushing for these policies, and they were in 1972, almost a century ago. Almost a half century ago, somebody like Bernie Sanders was standing up for abortion rights. He was standing up for something, you know, that people didn't support, but the year before that law was passed to allow women to get abortions. So even before that, when it was unpopular and when it wasn't even legal, he was still like, listen, you need to let women do what they want with their own bodies. If they have sexual intercourse with somebody, they get impregnated, it's their choice what they want to do with that fetus, with that embryo, with that zygote, whatever you want to refer to it as, you know? But sometimes you talk to these people and they want to give fucking, I've heard some people say like, the baby, so-called, inside of you deserves to have Second Amendment rights. So apparently the baby inside you should be allowed to have a gun. It's crazy. I don't know the specific details of how these idiots rationalize that position, but that's apparently what they say, and it's just ridiculous. So yeah, man, it's crazy when it comes to dealing with Republicans and right wingers and conservatives and stuff. I don't do it that much anymore these days because I've just lost hope in the fact that those people can even be convinced of, like, you know, believing in a rational position and a rational policy. I mean, you don't have hope for these people. They're just too far gone. You know, they're so crazy. It's like, good luck getting through to them, because it can't happen.